Okay, we move on now. The first part is to talk about God who intervenes to feed hungry people. God intervenes regularly to feed hungry people, and we see it in the scriptures. In the book of Exodus, Exodus chapter 16, we see that when the children of Israel left Egypt and they were in the desert for 40 years, as they were there, it came to a time when they were very hungry, because the desert is a dry, arid place, couldn't produce anything. And they began to cry and cry to Moses, "Why did you bring us to come and die of starvation here? Could we not have died in Egypt? Were there no graves in Egypt where we could have been buried? Why bringing us to die here?" And they complained and complained. And Moses went to God and cried to God. And God told Moses, "I know what I will do." God supplied what? Manna and quail. They had something that looks like flakes that fell down, and they picked and they ate. And they were satisfied. And every day they went out and picked something and ate. Very bounteously, very abundantly. Everyone ate and was satisfied. Now, also at a time of famine, 3 years of famine, God sent Elijah to the poor widow of Zarephath. Now, this widow had a child, and they had only one little gari wait for agolo of milk container, little gari in milk container. That is all they had left, which they were going to prepare into some eba and eat without soup and then die. That was the last. No hope after that, because there was nothing left. And Elijah the prophet went to this lady and said, "Oh, go and prepare food for me." And the woman said, "You are joking. From where?" "This is the little gari we have that we want to go and prepare, and when I prepare it and eat with my son, we finish, we'll die, because there's no hope. This famine has been on for 3 years, and nothing again, nothing." The prophet said, "Go and prepare for me the food, because the Lord says the food will not finish." Hey, the woman said, "Where did they come from?" Okay. The woman went and prepared the food and gave Prophet Elijah to eat, and gave his servant to eat, and she ate, and her son ate. I believe that they called neighbors to chop, and the food did not finish. God provided for them abundantly. Next is the one we hear in today's first reading, that the disciple of Elijah, who is Elisha, God sent him to go to this place. And when they presented to him the food that is meant for offering, the 20 barley loaves that are meant for offering, it's not meant for everybody to eat. The prophet said, "These people are all hungry. There were 100 of them. Give it to them to eat." Now, they are tiny little loaves, even not as big, St. Anthony's bread, which Antonio Padua, which the St. Anthony people use during June 13, Avi. Sometimes I think whether they are just being miserly when they make the bread like that. But sometimes they allow you to eat 2 or 3 loaves. Okay? Those tiny little loaves, which we call St. Anthony's bread, loaf. They are like that, sometimes smaller, meaning that a child can eat about 5 of them. Now, they brought 20 of them to the prophet. And the prophet says, "Give these 100 men who are terribly hungry, give them to eat, who are starving." And the servant said, "Even me alone, I fit work the whole thing, and I go still they look for more. You say make I give 100 people, how?" The prophet said, "Give it to them, for the word of God says they will eat and the food will not finish." The servant gave it to them, and they ate, and they had some left over. 2 Kings chapter 4. Now you remember also that in the book of John, the Gospel of St. John, when Jesus Christ went to Cana in Galilee with his mother, that these people who had a no-wambe party for wedding, they did not calculate very well. And people gathered plenty, and they ran out of wine. And the mother went to Jesus and said, "Hey, my pikin, then why don't finish? They are terribly embarrassed. Then why don't finish?" And he said, waiting. Which one be my own there? Which one make I do if they want to finish? Now visitor you be, and me too I be here. And the mother went to the disciples and said, "Make una do it. Waiting he tell una. Whatever I tell una, make una do." And Jesus instructed them to fill 10 jars, huge jars, with water. And those 10 jars of water became wine that the people drank, repete, and they say, oh, so better drink like this day here before. Now you know, tell us. So now after we done tire finish, now you they come give us better one. Wonderful drink. John chapter 2 verse 1 to 11. Now both Moses, Elijah and Elisha were prophets of the old covenant. Their various miracles show what our brother there said, God's loving concern for his people, God's sensitivity, God's concern, God's compassion. Good. Moses and the prophets show how God intervenes in nature to feed hungry people. That if it means violating the laws of nature in order to feed hungry people, God will do it. So that's what he did, to violate the laws of nature. According to the laws of nature, 20 barley loaves can feed perhaps 3 or 4 people, cannot feed 100 people. But he violated that law and he fed 100 hungry people. Now, a promised sign, not signed, a promised sign of the coming Messiah is the gift of another manna. That the prophets promise that a Messiah will come and will provide another manna, a more glorious manna, repeating, and not only repeating but surpassing that the manna that Moses gave in the desert. Now Jesus is that prophet of the new covenant. He shows all the signs of being the Messiah, including working signs and miracles, and this is why the crowds followed him. They saw those signs in him. When Jesus met hungry people, he gave them what they needed most. And what is it they needed most? Food. When he met hungry people, he gave them what they needed most. Food. He not only fed the hungry people, just as the prophets foretold that the Messiah would, he did so generously, lavishly, astonishingly, super abundantly. One more time. He did so generously, lavishly, astonishingly, and super abundantly. Now, let's look at the miracle of generosity. Like I said, the theme of our discussion today is God's abundant generosity. I see generosity as a miracle and also as the source of a miracle. The miracle of today is one of generosity. The hero of the gospel story is the small boy. Yesterday evening when we had this mass, we asked, who is the hero of this gospel? People had all kinds of ideas. Jesus is always the hero anytime. But in this specific story, the real hero is who? The small boy. The small boy who brought out his 5 loaves and 2 fish for sharing. I want to believe that in that crowd of 5,000 people, there were people like myself and Ucheago who had their lunch pack hidden somewhere in the... Do you imagine that 5,000 people were gathered for 2-3 days listening to Jesus and only one person had the lunch pack there? No. I imagine that many of them had in their bags, they had their own little lunch pack. But people like me and Ucheago do calculations, isn't it? We calculate that, look, we don't know how much longer we're going to stay here. When they asked who has food to bring out, we just kept it away, because if I bring it out now, what about evening? What would I eat? What about tomorrow morning? If we are still here, what would I eat? So that I can be, while the man is talking, I put hand in the pocket and cut some of it and put in the mouth and so on. Secretly, and not let people know. But the child did not calculate as children don't calculate. You see, Jesus Christ says, unless you make yourself like little children, you can never enter the kingdom of heaven. The child, when they say who has food here, the child said, I have now. Reached out for his purse, brought out his 5 barley loaves and said, here it is. He never thought about tomorrow. If he thought about tomorrow, he would have kept it. So I believe that many people there had food, but they kept it. This boy brought his own. The small boy surrendered all he had, and Jesus needed this little human effort to perform the miracle. Jesus does not perform miracle for you without asking you to cooperate with some little effort. Jesus needed, look, when Jesus performed the great miracle of the Eucharist, he needed bread, he needed wine. Human effort, right? Human effort. He needed wine, fruit of the vine, and work of human hands. He needed bread, you know, from wheat, work of human hands, in order to do the big miracle. So Jesus constantly needs some human effort, and he asks for the human effort, and the others are like, no, these hungry guys that I see here, if I bring my own, it may not remain. You know, at Easter, after Easter, I went to one of our outstations for Mass. And then we had a love feast that day in the outstation, and the CWO cooked food and brought. And some food, but the food would go around maybe only about 20 people. And then since I was sitting down like chief executive, they brought my own, like chief executives enjoy. They brought my own for me to eat with meat and so on. So I sat down to begin to eat my own. Then I saw about 20 children looking at me like this. I couldn't enjoy the thing because the way the eyes were looking at me, and then the mouth was doing like this. So after taking a few spoons, these guys were playing music, they didn't see it. After taking a few spoons, I had to surrender the rice to the boys. Now, the nearest boy to me, I took my plate, I gave it to him. What I saw was about 10 hands went into the plate, and they scattered the whole thing on the ground, and nobody ate any of the rice. Now, so these guys who had food in their pack would have thought, if we bring this thing out, nothing is remaining to them. So they hid the thing there. But this small boy never thought all those calculations, and what did he do? He brought out everything he had. So Jesus constantly wants his followers to do what? Try their best. Again, and to make an effort. One more time. Try their best and make an effort. I do have people who have problem. Most of us have problem, but somebody has problem, a moral problem. For example, he gets annoyed and says all kinds of terrible things from the mouth before he realizes it. Then I have sinned. Father, I have this problem. I get angry and say all kinds of things from my mouth. I want the Lord to heal me of this problem. Okay, the Lord is going to heal you of this problem, but you're going to make an effort. Can you begin tomorrow Sunday and just everybody that annoys you, just say God bless you? As you wake up, tell yourself, today I am not going to respond to anything. Even if the person blesses me or the person curses me, all I will say is God bless you, so that I will at least practice for one day and not say something bad from the mouth. That's the effort you have to do, and the Lord will complete it. But if you are waiting, immediately somebody says something to you, you are ready to give it out. You are already planning in your mind what you will say if somebody says so to you. How will the miracle happen now? How will it happen? Because the Lord will not transform you against your own will. The Lord wants you to make your little effort, to try. Many people are ready to make contributions out of their abundance. Big people like me, 1, 2, 3 million that I have, and then you come, you say that you need, Yeye comes to say, look, my orphanage, I need money, and I take 5,000 and I give you, right? And I ask people to clap for me. That's out of my abundance, right? From my 2, 3 million. Now, but the Lord wants us to make contribution out of what? Out of our poverty. And that's the difficult one, but that's where generosity is. Only few people are willing to give away all they have. These are the truly generous people, my dear friends. I did say here last week that generosity, kindness, care, and so on, compassion, they are measured not by the quantum, not by the amount you give out, but by the inconvenience it causes the person that does it. Do you understand that? Generosity, kindness, care, compassion. It is not how much in terms of money that you give out or time that you give out, but how much inconvenience you suffer as a result of doing it. So I'm a very busy person, and as I'm a very busy person, somebody comes with a serious problem, and I'm able to, instead of just saying, look, I'm terribly busy, I have this, I'm able to sit down and listen to the person and spend 1 hour. And as a result of the 1 hour that I spent for this person, I have lost a lot of things. Now, that my 1 hour may be more than 10 hours for somebody who has nothing to do and give that time. Do you understand? So it means the amount of generosity and compassion and care is measured by the inconvenience it causes the person that does it, not so much by the amount. And that is why Jesus Christ gave us the example of the widow, the poor widow who gave 2 pennies. Jesus was sitting down in the temple, you know, and big people like me and Yeye will come and then do like this and then donate 1 million naira. And Yeye will do her usual kind of dance and put then one poor widow will come like this and put 5 naira. And Jesus looked and said, see, all of you, that woman has put the greatest. Now, I'm not saying you should go and become poor after because of this. I was here during the last harvest. During the last harvest, I observed something. When Yeye was announcing million, 0.05 million, 0.1 million, there were some people who had 1,000 naira, 5,000 naira, they kept it back in their pocket. You didn't see that. They kept it back to their pocket because they say, so million, they roll here. You didn't see it. You were announcing million. I was seeing those words. So what then happened was that people were not bringing out of their poverty. They were intimidated. And I say, bring out your 2 naira, bring out your 5 naira, bring out your 1,000, even when big people like us are bringing 1 million. Because if you don't, you won't have multiplication. Right? The small boy brought the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and it was multiplied, right? Now, if you keep your own because there are big ones, then how would you have 12 baskets to carry home? Yesterday, I asked the young people, the people at MICE, I said, who do you think has the 12 baskets that were left? And some said that they are the disciples. I said, foul. Did the disciples bring anything? Is it not the person who sows that reaps? Who sowed? The small boy. So who should have the 12 baskets? The boy. So if you want to have the 12 baskets, be ready to bring out your 5 barley loaves. That's the point. Only when we share the little we appear to have will we discover how much we have left over. Can we repeat that? Will we discover how much we left over? This truth can only be discovered by doing it. The little boy came forward and surrendered his meager resources, his little talents, his small gifts, and the Lord transformed them mightily. Perhaps the real miracle is not the feeding of the 5,000. You see, the feeding of the feeding of this 5,000, the real miracle is not the multiplication of loaves. That is on the superficial level. But on a deeper level, the real miracle is in the transformation of selfish hearts of 5,000 people. And let me see if you understand that. Yes, on the surface level, Jesus multiplied 5 barley loaves to feed 5,000. But if you follow the explanation I gave, my conjecture, that perhaps many people had food there and they were hiding it. You know, when the boy brought his 5 loaves and 2 fish to Jesus, and Jesus took it and raised his eyes to heaven and began to say the blessing, you know what other people did? Hey, I go miss this blessing. Me too, I get to. So they followed the example of the boy and they quickly began to bring their food from their pockets. What then happened is that food was enough, repeated for everybody. That's another level of interpretation. That what Jesus did is that he actually, the miracle is that the real miracle is that from selfish people that were keeping things for themselves, he opened them up and food became available for everybody. And the biggest miracle, I have always said it here, the biggest miracle that Jesus performed is not that he transformed water into wine, but that he transformed wicked people into good people, selfish people into selfless and generous people. Actually, and magicians in those days, magicians could double food. The only thing that magicians could not do is to change a selfish heart to a generous heart. And that's the one that Jesus has come to do. The reason why Jesus came to the world is to die so that we may be transformed from being wicked people to being holy people, from being selfish people to being generous people. That's the reason why Jesus came. So this miracle is very important for us, that what he did, more than making food plenty, because he made food plenty, those people will get hungry again when they go now. Jesus is not always with them multiplying the food. But the one that he has done for them that is permanent is what? He transformed their hearts from being selfish to being generous. Perhaps with the good example of the boy giving Jesus his 5 loaves and 2 fish, all those who had hidden their food were inspired to look into their purses and into their treasures and bring all they had. And with the blessing of Jesus, they had more than they wanted, all of them. Jesus must have praised the boy who gave all he had. And like I said, the 12 baskets left over must have been given back to the boy, because the one who is generous and who gives many, he will return home with abundance. We must learn to give even in our poverty. You know, we hear of philanthropists, people who have big money and do big things. But the real people who do big things are people who in their poverty know how to give. We must learn that those who give all will always receive in abundance, for there is no half measures in love. I had an encounter with Dick Warren, who wrote this wonderful book about the purpose-filled life. And one of the most striking things about him is how he got so convinced 25, 27 years ago about the fact that paying 10% tithe is basic and that it is not enough for him. He was still a poor guy, and he told himself that he so believes in the promises that accompany tithes in the book of Malachi, chapter 3, that he doesn't want to pay 10%, because 10% is for everybody to pay. So he decided to pay 15% of tithe from his 10,000 or 29,000 naira salary. And he was amazed at the blessings that came to him. Then he raised it to 25%. And rather than become poorer, his businesses, his income, whatever, increased. And the drainage pipes for his income, like sickness of a child, like accident, like whatever, they reduced. So even though he was having only 75% of his income, he was living above people who had all the income, because he was convinced that if he gave out that 25% for God's work, that he was not going to lose it. He was going to get it in abundance. I have met many Catholics too who give that testimony so powerfully. It is not compulsory in our church to pay tithe, but there are people who have become so convinced of it that the 10% is for them only minimum, because they can see what they get out of it. This is it. We must learn that in the hands of Jesus, shortage becomes what? Abundance. And deficiency becomes what? Plenty. Can we read those lines? Love is a basket of 5 loaves and 2 fish. It is never enough until you start to give it away. One more time. Love is a basket of 5 loaves and 2 fish. It is never enough until you start to give it away. 2, be generous with your meager resources, your little talents, your small gifts, and see what mighty miracles God will do with them. 3, that your little life, your witness to Christ, and see what wonderful things God will do with you. One more time. Surrender your little life and your weak self to Christ and see what wonderful things God will do with you. Turn to your neighbor and discuss this. Discuss any of them for the moment. Every one of us is gifted. God has filled us with many gifts. You know what some people do? Some people look at others and they say, me, I no get gift. Other people have plenty gift. Look at me, I no get gift. Why? They are not looking into themselves to see the gifts that they have. And if they only bring out those gifts and use them, the Lord will bless it abundantly. Every one of us has enormous gifts. Of course, it's not in the same measure. Some people have more than others. But those who have more, they have more responsibility, right? To whom much has been given from him, much is expected. You who have little, you also have little responsibility. But everyone has been given gift. I mean, you are here, for example. And there are people in this church who come to church who are close to you, maybe some nanny near you, who doesn't know catechism. And you can teach some little catechism to the person. Because the knowledge of catechism that you have is not given to you to keep for yourself. It's given to you to share. And that reminds me, my cook cannot read. So we must, where is it? I gave you the assignment of teaching him to cook, to read. Have you done so? You see, Benjamin can read. We live together and my cook cannot read. So what promise are you making for this church today? Talk it to the microphone, because we need to teach him to read and he has been asking for it. So what?
Praise the Lord. Yeah, I promise to bring him up how to know how to read like me too.
Okay, a round of applause for him. Meaning that you don't have to be a professor of English, Abi, to teach another person how to read. Little things like that. You don't have to be a millionaire to support another person, to help another person. Every gift God has given to us is given to us to be able to share with others. God's generosity, as demonstrated by Jesus in today's reading, compels us, his followers, to live a life of sharing.